If you are hearing these words today, it is not by accident. Out of the millions of videos that exist on this platform, your finger stopped here, on this exact message, at this exact moment of your life, and I want you to understand something before we even begin. This message is not some accident of the algorithm. It is a calling catching up with you. So before we go any further, take 2 seconds, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, share it with someone who just came to mind without even knowing why, and if while listening to these words you feel something quietly break open inside you, write 777 in the comments. Not for me. For you. To mark today, the moment you stopped running from what you have known deep down for a long time. Because what I am about to tell you now, most people refuse to hear, but you, if you are still here, if something inside you kept you from scrolling to the next video, it is because deep down, you already know exactly what I am talking about. Listen closely. There is a reality very few people dare to face. God has chosen you, but you are ignoring him. Not out of malice. Not out of open rebellion. But out of distraction, fear, habit, exhaustion. That inner voice that has been telling you for years that it isn't the right time, that you aren't ready, that someone else will do it better than you. Understand this. It is not a coincidence that you have been feeling for some time now, an inner restlessness you cannot quite name. That emptiness you keep trying to fill with noise, with distractions, with endless busyness, is not boredom. It is a calling you have been pushing away for far too long. And today, this message has come to find you exactly where you are hiding. Most people never understand this truth. God never chooses at random, and he never withdraws his choice simply because you are slow to answer. He chose you before you even knew how to spell his name. He chose you before your mother even knew she was carrying you. He chose you not for what you have accomplished, but for what he placed inside you before you were even born. And yet, how many times have you looked away when that gentle voice tried to speak to you? How many times have you turned off the light at the exact moment it wanted to illuminate your path? This is not an accusation I am making against you today. It is an invitation. Because it is not too late. It is never too late to answer the one who has never stopped calling you. Look at the story of Moses. A man God chooses directly, face to face, through a bush that burns without being consumed. An encounter so supernatural it should be enough to convince anyone. And yet what does Moses do? He argues. He doubts. He invents excuse after excuse. Who am I to go to Pharaoh? What shall I say if they ask me your name? What if no one believes me? I am not eloquent, I am slow of speech and tongue. Send whoever you want, but not me. Understand this, even in the face of a visible miracle, even in the face of the voice of God himself, human beings will always find an excuse to ignore the calling. Moses did not doubt that God existed. He doubted his own worth. And that is exactly what is happening in your life today. It's not that you don't believe in God. It's that you don't yet believe God could really use you, with your flaws, your stutters, your past, your failures. If this resonates with you, listen closely to what comes next. God never withdrew his calling on Moses because of his excuses. He simply kept insisting patiently, until Moses finally agreed to rise up. And that is exactly what is happening with you right now. God has not abandoned the calling he placed on your life, just because you have been ignoring it for months, sometimes years. He keeps knocking on the door of your heart, in different ways, through encounters, through words you keep hearing repeated everywhere, through that emptiness nothing else seems to fill. It is not a coincidence that this very word is finding you again today. Understand this now, because it is a truth very few people want to face. Ignoring God does not always mean rejecting him outright. Sometimes it simply means being too busy to listen to him. Look at the story of Jonah. A man given a clear, precise mission by God, with no ambiguity at all. Go to Nineveh and proclaim the message I give you. But what does Jonah do? He doesn't even argue. He doesn't even ask questions. He gets up, and he flees in the exact opposite direction. He boards a ship for Tarshish, as far as possible from what God asked of him. Understand this. Sometimes ignoring God's call doesn't come from a lack of understanding, but from a conscious, deliberate refusal, because what God is asking disturbs our plans, our comfort, our personal preferences far too much. And what happened to Jonah? A storm so violent that even the sailors, used to the dangers of the sea, believed they were going to die. Jonah knew, deep down, that this storm was directly connected to him. And in the end, thrown into the sea, swallowed by a great fish, he found himself for 3 days and 3 nights in the deepest darkness, alone with himself, alone with his own choices, alone with the silence of his flight. If you feel today that your life resembles a storm you don't understand, if you feel like everything seems to be working against you for no apparent reason, ask yourself honestly, is there not, somewhere inside you, a calling you have been running from for far too long? It is not a coincidence that certain storms only calm down once we finally agree to turn around. Listen closely, because here is an even deeper truth. God did not choose you only for an outward mission. He chose you for a relationship. And this is precisely what most people ignore the most. You can know a great deal about God, you can even serve Him, talk about Him, pretend to walk with Him, while completely ignoring Him at the level of the heart. Look at the story of Martha and Mary. Martha bustles about, she prepares, she serves, she worries over 1,000 details, while Mary simply sits at the feet of Jesus to listen to Him. And when Martha complains that her sister isn't helping her, Jesus answers her with a gentleness that has echoed through the centuries. Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is needed, and Mary has chosen the better part. Understand this deeply. You can be extremely busy, extremely active, extremely invested in 1,000 tasks, while completely ignoring the presence of the one who chose you. This is not a matter of religion. It is not a matter of ritual. It is a matter of presence. How many times this week alone have you been so caught up with work, worries, screens, distractions, that you didn't even take the time to sit in silence, simply to listen to what God wanted to tell you? This is not an accusation. It is a mirror. And if this resonates with you, know that it is not too late for you too to sit at the feet of the one who chose you long before you chose anything at all. Most people also never understand this truth. You can be chosen by God and yet keep living exactly as if you weren't, until the day a direct confrontation finally wakes up your sleeping conscience. Look at the story of David and the prophet Nathan. David, the man after God's own heart, chosen from his youth, anointed king over an entire nation, still falls into serious sin, and for months, he keeps living as if nothing happened. He deliberately ignores the voice of his own conscience. He stays silent. He hides. And it is only when the prophet Nathan comes to tell him a seemingly harmless story that he finally understands. That man is you. Understand this. Sometimes God chooses us not to leave us undisturbed in our comfort, but precisely to confront us with what we refuse to see in ourselves. And look at what happened next. David did not defend himself. He did not make excuses. He did not look for justifications. He simply fell down broken before God, and said these simple words, I have sinned against the Lord. And it was precisely this humility, this moment when he stopped ignoring what God had been trying to show him for months, that preserved his relationship with God, despite the terrible consequences of his choices. If there is something in you today that you feel that your conscience has been telling you for a long time, but that you keep pushing away, understand that this message might well be your Nathan. It is not a coincidence that these words are confronting you today. Listen closely, because here is another overwhelming example. Look at the story of Gideon. God calls him directly. An angel appears to him and names him a mighty warrior. And yet what does Gideon do? He doubts. He asks for proof, again and again. He asks for a wool fleece to be wet while the ground stays dry. Then, still not satisfied, he asks for the opposite, a dry fleece while the ground all around is soaked with dew. Understand this. Gideon, in a sense, was ignoring God's call, not by rejecting it outright, but by constantly demanding more proof before daring to fully believe it. And God, in his infinite patience, answered each of his requests, never growing weary, never withdrawing the calling. Understand this deeply. You can be extremely busy, extremely active, extremely invested in 1,000 tasks, while completely ignoring the presence of the one who chose you. This is not a matter of religion. It is not a matter of ritual. It is a matter of presence. How many times this week alone have you been so caught up with work, worries, screens, distractions, that you didn't even take the time to sit in silence, simply to listen to what God wanted to tell you? This is not an accusation. It is a mirror. And if this resonates with you, know that it is not too late for you too to sit at the feet of the one who chose you long before you chose anything at all. Most people also never understand this truth. You can be chosen by God and yet keep living exactly as if you weren't, until the day a direct confrontation finally wakes up your sleeping conscience. Look at the story of David and the prophet Nathan. David, the man after God's own heart, chosen from his youth, anointed king over an entire nation, still falls into serious sin, and for months, he keeps living as if nothing happened. He deliberately ignores the voice of his own conscience. He stays silent. He hides. And it is only when the prophet Nathan comes to tell him a seemingly harmless story that he finally understands. That man is you. Understand this. Sometimes God chooses us not to leave us undisturbed in our comfort, but precisely to confront us with what we refuse to see in ourselves. And look at what happened next. David did not defend himself. He did not make excuses. He did not look for justifications. He simply fell down broken before God, and said these simple words, "I have sinned against the Lord." And it was precisely this humility, this moment when he stopped ignoring what God had been trying to show him for months, that preserved his relationship with God, despite the terrible consequences of his choices. If there is something in you today that you feel that your conscience has been telling you for a long time, but that you keep pushing away, understand that this message might well be your Nathan. It is not a coincidence that these words are confronting you today. Listen closely, because here is another overwhelming example. Look at the story of Gideon. God calls him directly. An angel appears to him and names him a mighty warrior. And yet what does Gideon do? He doubts. He asks for proof, again and again. He asks for a wool fleece to be wet while the ground stays dry. Then, still not satisfied, he asks for the opposite, a dry fleece while the ground all around is soaked with dew. Understand this. Gideon, in a sense, was ignoring God's call, not by rejecting it outright, but by constantly demanding more proof before daring to fully believe it. And God, in his infinite patience, answered each of his requests, never growing weary, never withdrawing the calling. This resonates with you. Listen closely to what comes next, because here is another truth most people ignore. You can be chosen for an immense position and yet, out of fear, refuse to fully step into that choice. Look at the story of Saul, the first king of Israel. Chosen directly by God, anointed by the prophet Samuel in front of the whole nation. And yet, at the very moment he is to be presented publicly as king, he is found hiding among the baggage, as if hoping to escape his own destiny. Understand this. The fear of a calling can be so strong that it literally pushes us to hide at the exact moment God wants to reveal us. But God had him sought out, and he brought him out of hiding, in spite of himself. If you recognize yourself in this image today, hiding among the baggage of your own life, in your excuses, in your procrastination, in your fear of being seen, understand that God will not leave you in the shadows forever if his calling on your life is real. He will keep coming after you, again and again, until you finally agree to come out. The question is not whether God will keep calling you. The question is how much longer you're going to stay hidden before answering. Listen closely now, because here is the story that may best illustrate everything we have been talking about since the beginning. Look at Jonah once more, but from another angle. After fleeing, after being swallowed by the fish, after finally obeying and seeing Nineveh repent on a massive scale, Jonah should have rejoiced. His mission had succeeded beyond all expectation. And yet what does he do? He sits apart, angry, almost disappointed that God showed mercy to that city. Understand this. Sometimes, even after finally answering the call, part of us still ignores the very heart of God, his mercy, his patience toward those we judge unworthy of his grace. Ignoring God is not only about running from his mission. Sometimes it's also about refusing to share his heart for others. Understand this deeply, because it may be the most important truth in this entire message. God never grows tired of you, even when you grow tired of him. He did not withdraw his calling on Moses, despite his excuses. He did not abandon Jonah despite his flight and his anger. He did not erase David despite his sin hidden for months. He did not reject Gideon despite his repeated doubts. He did not strike Peter from his list despite his 3 public denials. He did not forget Saul hiding among the baggage. And he has not forgotten you, despite all the time you have spent ignoring him, pushing away the gentle voice that, even today, keeps quietly knocking on the door of your heart. Now that we have walked through these stories together, I want to speak to you concretely, because a revelation that doesn't turn into action stays sterile. The first thing I ask of you is to stop running into noise. Like Martha, you may be filling every minute of your day so you never have to sit in silence with what God is trying to tell you. Take 10 minutes today. Turn off everything around you. Sit down, like Mary, and simply listen. The second thing I ask of you is to stop demanding more and more proof before moving forward. Like Gideon, you may be waiting for a clearer sign, one more confirmation, absolute certainty before daring to respond to what you already know. But at some point, you have to rise up with the faith you have, even imperfect, even trembling. The third thing I ask of you is to stop hiding behind your excuses. Like Moses, you may have been repeating for years that you're not eloquent enough, not qualified enough, not prepared enough. But God never chose the most qualified. He chooses those who agree to rise up despite their excuses. The fourth thing I ask of you is to stop fleeing in the opposite direction when what God asks disturbs your comfort. Like Jonah, you may know exactly what you should do, but you'd rather walk away than face a mission that feels too demanding, too uncomfortable, too different from your own plans. The fifth thing I ask of you is to drop the excuses and simply tell the truth before God, as David did before Nathan. If something inside you knows you need to change, to stop, to come back, stop justifying yourself. Confession breaks the chains that silence keeps in place. The sixth thing I ask of you is to come out of hiding. Like Saul among the baggage, you may still be hiding today behind your shyness, your fear of others' judgment, your fear of failure. But the calling of God on your life will not disappear simply because you remain still in the shadows. The seventh thing I ask of you is to widen your heart to match the heart of God. Like Jonah sitting in anger before God's mercy toward Nineveh, don't let your judgment of others keep you from fully living the calling God has placed on your life. His grace is wider than we sometimes want to admit. Understand this now, because we are approaching the conclusion of this message, and I want every word to sink deep into you. The fact that you are still here, listening to these words up to this exact point, is not by accident. It is not a coincidence that this message speaks exactly to what you have been living in secret for months, perhaps years. God has chosen you. He did not choose you yesterday, or last week, or the day you started paying attention to Him. He chose you before you even knew what that meant. And despite all your running, all your excuses, all your doubts, all your silences, all your distractions, that choice has never been withdrawn. You did not arrive here by accident. This message did not find you by chance. If something inside you is trembling right now, it is not fear. It is the recognition of a voice you have known your whole life, but that you learn to silence beneath the noise of everyday life. That voice is not accusing you today. It is inviting you. It is not asking you to have all the answers, just as Moses did not have them all. It is not asking you to have already obeyed perfectly, just as Jonah did not obey the first time. It is not asking you to be without sin, just as David was not. It is not asking you to have flawless faith, just as Gideon did not. It is not asking you to have always been faithful, just as Peter had not been. It is asking you only one thing, to stop running, to stop hiding, and to finally answer today the one who has never stopped calling you. So today, I tell you with all the conviction these stories inspire in me, it is not too late. It is never too late as long as your heart still beats, as long as that voice still echoes somewhere inside you, as long as this message keeps touching you despite every reason you could find to ignore it once again. What God placed in you before you were born has not expired. That dream you buried under years of compromise is not dead. That mission you have been running from for so long is still waiting for you, patiently, exactly as God waits for you, patiently, at every moment of your life. If this message has resonated with you, if you feel these words were truly meant for you, then before you close this video, take a moment. Like it, so that other people, exactly like you today, might come across this message right when they need it most. Subscribe if you haven't already, to keep receiving words that wake up what has been sleeping inside you for far too long. Share this video with someone who just came to mind right now, without even knowing why that name popped into your head, because maybe that person is running from the exact same calling you are. And above all, if you are receiving this message with faith, if something inside you just woke up after months, maybe years, of silence, write 777 in the comments. Not to prove anything to anyone, but to mark before yourself and before heaven, the exact moment you stopped running and finally chose to answer. He chose you long before you ever chose Him. And today, the only question that truly matters is this: will you keep ignoring Him, or will you finally answer?